These are 4 rural counties in the northern part of northeast Texas. Red River County's county seat is Clarksville, Texas. Bowie is Texarkana. Titus County's county seat is Mount Pleasant. And Cass County's seat is Linden, Texas. And you can see that Red River County in 1920 had a population comparable to Denton. But instead of increasing, Red River's county population has gone from 30-something to about 12,000 people. You can see also in this information the history of Cass County. Cass County is relatively the same population as it was 90 years ago. Comparing Cass County to Titus County, you can see that Cass County has relatively stayed the same, while Titus County has significantly changed in the last 40 years. The population in Titus County is now larger than Cass County, and all of these counties on this slide still remain mostly rural communities. But I would suggest to you that the 2 counties on the left are principally agrarian, and the 2 counties on the right, while agrarian, have significant industrial components to it. To give you an idea, going back for just a moment, to these 4 counties that Dallas, Fort Worth, and them represent, what if those 4 counties became a state among them of their own? So let's just be a state and call it North Texas. That population would be the 21st most populated state in the United States, and Texas would still be the 2nd most populated state, even after all of that population is taken away from the county. I tell you that because we're talking about a population greater than the entire population of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. So when we're talking about how much population is in this little small geography, we're talking about populations that are greater than some of the states that are contiguous to us. So when you start trying to get your arms around how large is this demand, it's large. And using that word probably isn't adequate to describe it, but that's the way I'm going to try to describe it for you tonight. And to recap that comparison of population dynamic that's going on, if we start looking at census information, we've got 5.6 million people living in those 4 counties, compared to a population over in northeast Texas for Fort County, 168,000. That tells you that by population, it is significantly different. And when you look at the population, we're talking 22.35% of all of Texans live in those 4 counties, compared to less than 1% living in the geography that we're classifying rural for this conversation. The next graphic I wanted to try to illuminate for you is this one. That blue line is the largest use of water in Texas. That blue line is attributable to mostly rural. That blue line is irrigation, and that's water that we use to grow things that urban people need to survive on. So while you can't completely divorce urban and rural and keeping them separate, that blue line, where it is used, is predominantly rural. That red line is going up is mostly a function of more people. Even when we're better at using the water, more efficient, being as good a steward as we know how to be, we're still going to see an upward red line for people. Now, that gold line that you see here in manufacturing, for our region, that's the highest line, meaning that in our part of the world, water is economic opportunity, and if we don't have it, we can't have the industries that we need. And what am I talking about I'm talking about particularly Eastman Chemical near Longview, U.S. Steel near Lone Star, International Paper near Texas County, Campbell's Soup near Paris, Pilgrim's Pride and Luminant near Mount Pleasant, AEP and Swepco in multiple locations. And this graphic will show you how distinctly different our rural part is to observations of Texas. The blue line that is dominant in Texas comes in fourth in our part of the world. The red line that is second and remains second, and by the end of the horizon of 2060 is perceived to be the largest use in Texas, is projected to be the third largest use in Texas, in our part of Northeast Texas, meaning that that green line, which is power, is going to consume more water over time, and that's because conventional water plants need water to generate electricity, and we have to have more electricity because that's what it takes to purify water and to move water to where it's needed. This graphic shows in blue how the total demand is projected to be over the next 50 years. The red line shows what our existing supplies are. And part of the reason why existing supplies go down is the moment you impound and begin a lake, you begin to end its life. Lakes are just like people. They don't live forever. And when you start trapping water, you're also going to be trapping dirt. And as you, over time, trap more dirt, you invariably will get less capability. And I know that there's plenty of engineers in the room that know this information a lot more than I do. And I want to say right now that I appreciate all of the knowledge that has been passed on to me, because some of those people that imparted that knowledge are here tonight, and I appreciate understanding those relationships. You know, one of the other things I want to mention is this little note I made down at the bottom of this slide, and that is invariably we're going to have more supply than demand. And that's because we can never perfectly match the supply and the demand. And that's a practical reason is if there is a surplus in Bowie County and the deficit happens to be west of Tyler in Van Zandt County, we cannot practically move small amounts of water hundreds of miles from where there is surplus to where there is a deficit. And that's the reason why I say it's like trying to put that square peg in a round hole. You're never going to get it to fit exactly flush. The next graphic I wanted to mention to you is water management strategies. Those are the things that we're going to have to do in the next 50 years if we're going to make it close the supply and demand. And the examples I'm talking about are conservation, wastewater reuse, and desalination. There are other things that we'll need to be doing, like connecting to existing supplies. In Smith County, you know that you have Lake Halstein, and part of Lake Halstein's future is going to be helping meet some of that demand that is in Region C. This graphic will tell you for the next few years that we haven't built everything we need to build in terms of pump stations, pipelines, wastewater treatment plants, things that we'll describe as infrastructure. It's projected that we're going to need in this state $231 billion. And let me ask, how many of us have $5,000 in our back pocket right now? Anybody? Anybody going to fess up? So I'm going to walk. Johnson, you got 5,000? Okay, how about this? We take 5,000 per testing because that's what it maxes up to be over the next 50 years. Well, if we can get, take 5,000 divided by 50 years, that's $100. $100 in a year's time is less than $10 a month. How many of us have $10 a month in our wallet? Okay, this is the reason why we do planning is it chokes a horse to try to come up with $5,000 out of your wallet, but it's not going to choke you $10. And by doing good planning, what we're trying to accomplish is make this investment in manageable increments. And as we talk about what are we going to have to do, this is a pie chart that tries to show you where these pieces of the future come from. Anybody want to yell out what the biggest sliver is?
Surface.
I'll give you a hint. Toledo Bend, Wright-Patman, Lake Palestine. They're existing lakes that are being presently underutilized. And so we're projecting as a state that a third of our future need that we've got to work on is going to come from things that we already have. We're just not efficiently using it. Right now we're talking about the possibility of further development in the Sulphur River. That's quite controversial. Where that sliver is in that new major reservoir pile, which is basically a sixth of that pie. So we're talking about a possible strategy that in the future is about a sixth of what is the total. And if you look at conservation and reuse, their percentages are larger. I would say that this information suggests that it's more important or more significant how much success we can have in conservation and then reuse. One of the depressing things that you see about this slide to me is the low amount of percentage assigned to desalination. There's basically two ways to do desalination. One is to take it from the ocean. The other is to take it from the ground. If you take it from the ground, that groundwater is not quite as salty as the ocean water, so it doesn't cost quite as much. But I don't mean to get anybody in trouble about their age, but how many in the audience remember a time when JFK was president? His hope in the early 1960s it was that we would become much more heavily engaged with desalination. Half a century later, we're still struggling with that. The engineers in the room, y'all know why we're struggling with it, is because your clients imposed upon you the obligation to find strategies that are cost effective. And desalination is not more implemented principally, not because we don't have the technology, because we do. It is the power cost associated with turning salty water into water that is drinkable. All right, that leads me to the last question that I had designed to talk about, and that is what is it in our future? These are the things that I think that we need to talk about for our future, and that we have to be better at non-traditional water supplies. If we don't, we're going to start having major problems, and these are the projections of what happens if we do nothing. So I want to stop with that last question and say, how many of us have heard a bride being told, wear something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and a silver sixpence in the shoe? Everybody heard that? Okay. I want to say that for me, the something old is this population. For rural, we have been struggling with population and maintaining our population and struggling with our economic base since at least 1920. The something borrowed is the $2 billion that we were talking about earlier. The something blue is the water. But now we're at a crossroads on the something new part. And we don't have harmony on that. So if you're asking, are we going to have a bride and a marriage, I'm going to have to tell you, I'm not sure that we my presentation, but I do want to give one more slide. And I do this wherever I go when given an opportunity to speak because it is part of the rural part. How many of us can now identify what kind of fish that is? If you can identify that fish, raise your hand. Okay, good. I'm going to keep preaching this message until I get more hands up. This is a fish that predates the dinosaurs. It's more than 6 feet long and 200 pounds when it's fully grown. It's known for its caviar. It can't be caught by a rod and reel because it's so primitive. It only goes with its mouth open through water catching it. We have intended to restock this fish into northeast Texas. The reason why we're trying to restock it is this graphic that shows that while in the Mississippi it's a stable population, in Texas it's an endangered, threatened species, and in Caddo Lake, which is the picture to your bottom left, that lake is deserving of all the efforts that we can give to make it a better place than when we found it. And by reintroducing the paddlefish, we have some hope for that. There's an environmental group that has a website, and it doesn't cost you anything, but you can adopt a paddlefish. Earlier this month, we introduced some paddlefish that are about 18 inches to 2 feet long. You can get on the website and hear that story. It's quite a remarkable story. You can get on the website and adopt the fish, and over time you can track it because they were embedded with about a 4-inch receiver, and we're tracking them with very new technology. So any of you who fish Caddo Lake, stay away from those fish because we don't want to see it off in somebody's backyard or somebody's freezer. So that's my presentation tonight, and I understand we're going to do questions after Wayne has spoken. So Beck, I'm going to turn it back over to you.